There is something almost cruel about learning English. You can spend years collecting words. You can memorize grammar rules. You can watch videos every morning. You can underline phrases. You can buy courses. You can fill notebooks with vocabulary. You can even understand movies, podcasts, and conversations surprisingly well. And then someone looks at you and says, "Tell me about yourself." Suddenly, your mind becomes empty. You know the words. You know the grammar. You understand the question. But the sentence will not come. And that moment can make you believe something that simply is not true. You start thinking, maybe I am not good at English. Maybe you are not intelligent enough. Maybe you are too old to learn. Maybe your pronunciation is terrible. Maybe you need another 1,000 words. Maybe you need another course. Maybe you need to study grammar one more time. But what if the problem is not that you do not know enough English? What if the problem is that you have trained the wrong skill? Because knowing English and using English are not the same thing. Your brain can recognize a sentence without being able to produce one quickly. You can understand a word without being able to retrieve it under pressure. You can know a grammar rule without being able to use it naturally in conversation. This is the difference between knowledge and access. And that difference changes everything. Think about your first language. You do not normally sit there constructing every sentence piece by piece. You do not think, subject, verb, tense, preposition, correct article, now speak. You simply speak. Not because your first language is magically easier, because your brain has practiced retrieving it so many times that the process has become automatic. And that is what you need to build with English. Not another mountain of information, a faster pathway between thought and speech. So today, I want you to stop looking at yourself as someone who is bad at English. Look at yourself as someone whose brain has not yet been trained enough for automatic English. That is a completely different problem, and a different problem requires a different solution. You do not need to spend the rest of your life studying English. You need to train your brain to use the English you already know. And in the next 7 lessons, we are going to change the way you practice. Not with complicated tricks, not with unrealistic promises, not with the fantasy that you will become fluent overnight, but with a practical understanding of how speaking becomes automatic. Lesson 1. Stop collecting English and start activating it. Let me ask you a simple question. How many English words do you know? You probably do not know the exact number, but you may know thousands. And yet when you speak, you probably use a much smaller group of words again and again. This is normal. It is also one of the biggest clues about what you should do next. Many English learners spend most of their time increasing their vocabulary. They learn 5 new words today, 10 tomorrow, 20 on the weekend. Then they forget half of them. A month later, they learn another list. The cycle continues. Learn, forget, learn again, forget again. And after years, they still feel stuck. Why? Because recognition is not production. You may recognize the word hesitate when you read it. You may understand it when someone says it. But can you use it naturally when you are telling a story? Can you say, "I hesitated before answering because I was not sure what to say"? Can you use it tomorrow without translating from your first language? That is the real test. A word becomes useful when your brain can retrieve it when you need it. This is why you should stop asking, "How many words do I know?" Start asking, "How many words can I actually use?" That question is much more powerful. Imagine you have a toolbox. One person owns 500 tools, but has never practiced using them. Another person owns 50 tools and knows exactly how to use each one. Who is more useful when something breaks? The second person. Your English is the same. You do not need an enormous vocabulary sitting silently inside your memory. You need a working vocabulary. Words that are connected to your experiences. Words that you can retrieve quickly. Words that appear in your speech again and again. So take the vocabulary you already know and activate it. Choose one word. Do not simply read its definition. Use it. Talk about yourself with it. Talk about yesterday with it. Talk about tomorrow with it. Ask yourself a question using it. Answer the question. Use it in a negative sentence. Use it in a question. Use it in a personal story. For example, take the word improve. Do not just memorize. Improve means to become better. Instead, say, I want to improve my English. Then, I have improved a lot, but I still struggle when I speak quickly. Then, if I practice every day, I will improve. Then ask yourself, what is one thing I want to improve this year? Answer naturally. I want to improve the way I communicate because I sometimes know what I want to say, but I cannot express it quickly. Now the word is no longer a piece of information. It is connected to your identity, your thoughts, your experiences, and your speech. That is training, and this is where many learners make a mistake. They think repetition means reading the same word 10 times. It does not. Real repetition means retrieving the word repeatedly. Your brain becomes stronger when it has to find the information. So do not just look, recall. Do not just listen, respond. Do not just read, speak. Do not just memorize, use. If you learn a phrase today, make it appear in your own life. If the phrase is, I am used to, say, I am used to waking up early, then change it. I am used to working under pressure. I am not used to speaking English in front of people. Are you used to speaking English every day? Now you have created multiple pathways around one structure. This is how a phrase moves from passive knowledge to active ability. And there is another important truth. You do not have to speak perfectly while training. In fact, demanding perfection can slow you down. Your first goal is retrieval. Your second goal is clarity. Your third goal is accuracy. And with time, these begin to work together. Think about a child learning to speak. The child does not wait until every sentence is grammatically perfect. The child experiments. The child makes mistakes. The child repeats. The child hears correction. The child tries again. And eventually, speaking becomes automatic. You need to give yourself permission to train in the same way. Not childish, not careless, but experimental. If every speaking attempt becomes an examination, your brain will become tense, and a tense brain does not retrieve language as easily. So stop treating every conversation like a final exam. Treat it like training. That one mental change can completely alter your practice. You are not trying to prove that you know English. You are trying to teach your brain to access it. That is the first lesson. Stop collecting endlessly. Start activating what you already have. Because fluency is not created by the size of your vocabulary alone. It is created by how quickly and naturally you can access the language inside you. Lesson 2. Stop translating every thought. There is a moment in many English learners' minds that happens before almost every sentence. They think in their first language. They translate the thought. They search for English words. They arrange the sentence, they check the grammar, then they speak. And because all of this happens in sequence, speaking becomes slow. Imagine trying to drive a car while manually controlling every tiny part of the engine. You would never become a smooth driver that way. Language works similarly. You need to build direct connections. Instead of first language, then translation, then English. You want meaning, then English. This does not happen by simply telling yourself, think in English. That advice is incomplete. You cannot force your brain to think in English all day by repeating the command. You have to train direct associations. Start with small things. Look around your room. Do not name everything in your first language and translate it. Simply notice and say, chair, window, phone, door, book. Then move beyond single words. The window is open. My phone is charging. The room is quiet. I need to drink some water. I am getting tired. These sentences are simple. That is the point. You are building speed. You are teaching your brain that a situation can trigger English directly, then make it slightly more difficult. Instead of describing what you see, describe what you are doing. I am making tea. I am checking my messages. I am getting ready for work. I am looking for my keys. I forgot where I put my wallet. Now English is becoming attached to real actions. Then move into thoughts. I wonder what will happen tomorrow. I do not feel like going outside. I need to finish this before dinner. I am not sure whether I should call him. This is where something powerful begins to happen. English stops being only a school subject. It becomes a tool for thinking. And that is what you want. You do not need to eliminate your first language. That would be unrealistic. Your first language is deeply connected to your life. The goal is not to ban it. The goal is to reduce unnecessary translation. There is a difference. If you are discussing a complex subject, translation may naturally happen. That is fine. But if you are trying to say, I am hungry, you should not need a mental conference before producing the sentence. Simple language should become automatic. This is why beginners often benefit more from mastering a small number of common sentence patterns than from memorizing complicated expressions. Your brain loves patterns. You should use that. Instead of learning isolated sentences, learn flexible structures. I want to, I need to, I am trying to, I used to, I am thinking about, I am not sure if, the reason is, what I mean is, as far as I know, I would rather. These structures become frames. Once the frame is automatic, you only need to insert the content. I want to improve my English. I want to change my routine. I want to learn how to cook. I want to travel. The beginning stays familiar while the meaning changes. That is exactly what you want. You are reducing the amount of mental work required to produce a sentence. And here is a practice that can be surprisingly powerful. Choose one ordinary activity every day. For example, making breakfast. Describe the entire process in English. I am opening the refrigerator. I need some eggs. There is no milk left. I forgot to buy bread. I think I will make something simple. You will probably make mistakes. Good. Notice them. Correct them. Continue. The next day, repeat the same activity. You will notice that some sentences come more easily. That is not an accident. Your brain is learning. Now do the same thing with your commute, your workout, your workday, your evening routine, your shopping, your weekend plans, your thoughts about a movie, your opinion about a current event. The more you connect English with real life, the less dependent you become on translation, and eventually, something strange starts happening. You catch yourself thinking a sentence in English before you consciously decide to speak English. That is a sign that the pathway is becoming stronger. Do not underestimate those small moments. Fluency is built from thousands of them. You do not wake up one morning with a completely different brain. You build it through repeated use. So the second lesson is simple. Stop trying to translate your entire mind. Train direct connections between meaning and English. Start small, repeat often, and let your brain gradually make English more automatic. Lesson 3. Train retrieval, not recognition. This may be one of the most important lessons in your entire English journey. You probably recognize far more English than you can produce. You hear a word and think, of course I know that. You read a sentence and understand it immediately. Someone says a phrase, and its meaning is obvious. But when you try to speak, the word disappears. This can be incredibly frustrating. You feel as if your English is trapped somewhere inside you. But there is a reason. Recognition and retrieval are different mental tasks. Recognition asks, have I seen this before? Retrieval asks, Can I produce it right now? Speaking requires retrieval. That means your practice must include retrieval. Here is a simple example. Suppose you learn the word decision. You read, I have made a difficult decision. You understand it. You repeat it. You feel like you know it. Now close the book. Wait. Then ask yourself, what is one difficult decision I have made? You have to search your memory. Maybe you say, moving to another city was a difficult decision for me. Now the word has been retrieved. That retrieval strengthens the pathway. The next day, ask again, what decisions do people regret? What is the best decision you have made recently? How do you usually make an important decision? You are forcing the brain to find the word in different contexts. This is much more valuable than reading the same definition repeatedly. Because speaking is a retrieval sport, you have to practice finding language. And there is another technique that can help. Delayed repetition. Learn a phrase, use it, then come back to it later. Not immediately later, maybe 10 minutes later, then that evening, then the next day, then 3 days later, then a week later. The exact schedule does not need to be perfect. The principle is what matters. Give your brain opportunities to retrieve the language after some forgetting has occurred. Why? Because effortful retrieval is valuable. If you always look at the answer before your brain has a chance to search, you are making the task too easy. You need to struggle a little. Not so much that you become overwhelmed, just enough that your brain has to work. For example, write 5 English questions on paper. Do not write the answers. Questions like, what did you do yesterday? What are you planning to do this weekend? What is something you want to change? What makes a person successful? What is one mistake you learned from? Now speak. No script, no dictionary, no translator, just answer. At first you may pause. You may repeat words. You may make grammatical mistakes. That is not failure. That is retrieval training, and you should pay attention to something important. Do not stop every time you cannot find the perfect word. If the exact word disappears, explain the idea using simpler English. Suppose you forget the word exhausted. You can say, I was very tired. Suppose you forget appointment. You can say, I had a meeting with the doctor at 3. Suppose you forget frustrated. You can say, I was angry because nothing was working. This is a major speaking skill. Fluent speakers are not people who know every word. They are people who know how to keep communicating when a word is missing. That is why you should train paraphrasing. Take one idea and express it 3 different ways. I was exhausted. I was extremely tired. I had no energy left. Same basic meaning, different language. This makes your speaking more flexible, and it removes the belief that there is only one correct sentence. There usually is not. English gives you options. Your job is to develop enough flexibility to choose one. Another powerful practice is the 1-minute challenge. Choose a topic, your favorite food, your hometown, your job, a book you enjoyed, something you learned recently, a difficult day, a person who influenced you. Set a timer for 1 minute. Speak continuously. Do not stop to search for perfection. If you cannot remember a word, explain it. If you make a mistake, continue. When the minute ends, stop, then do it again. But this time, try to make your answer slightly clearer. The 3rd time, try to make it more natural. You are not memorizing a speech. You are training your brain to retrieve language under a small amount of pressure. That matters. Because real conversation has pressure. Someone asks a question. You have a few seconds. You cannot open a grammar book. You cannot search your vocabulary list. You have to produce something. So your practice should sometimes resemble the real situation, not constantly, but regularly. And remember this, a word you struggle to retrieve is not a useless word. It is a word your brain is learning to access. The struggle is part of the process. So stop measuring your English only by what you recognize. Measure it by what you can retrieve. That is the third lesson. Train your brain to find language, not merely recognize it. Lesson 4. Stop practicing perfect sentences and start practicing real conversations. There is a strange trap in language learning. You can become excellent at writing sentences that nobody would naturally say in conversation. You can spend 10 minutes constructing one perfect sentence. Then someone asks you a simple question and you freeze. Why? Because conversation is not a writing exam. Conversation moves, it changes, it interrupts you, it surprises you, it requires reactions, it requires listening, it requires adapting. That means you need to train conversation, not just sentences. Imagine someone asks, "What did you do this weekend?" A learner may think, "I need a grammatically correct answer," and immediately pressure rises. Instead, train a conversational response. Nothing too exciting, honestly. I stayed home most of Saturday, but on Sunday I went out with a friend. We found this little restaurant. Notice something. The speaker is not constructing each sentence like a mathematical equation. They are using familiar conversational patterns. Nothing too exciting, honestly, most of the time. Actually, by the way, the thing is, you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is, these phrases give your brain time. They also make speech more natural. Learn them as tools, not decorations. For example, when you need time to think, instead of becoming silent, use, "Let me think about that." That's an interesting question. I've never really thought about it that way. I'm not completely sure, but I think, what I mean is, these are not signs of weak English. They are part of real communication. Native and fluent speakers use conversational structures constantly. So do not train yourself to produce perfect sentences in isolation. Train yourself to manage a conversation. Ask questions, answer questions, react, clarify, agree, disagree, change the topic, tell a story, give an example, explain something again. This is where role play becomes powerful. You can create imaginary conversations by yourself. Imagine someone says, "Why are you learning English?" Answer. Then imagine they asks, "How long have you been learning?" Answer. Then, "What is the hardest part?" Answer. Then, "Do you practice every day?" Answer. Then, "Where do you want to use English?" Answer. Now imagine they disagree with you. You think grammar is not important? Respond. This is much closer to actual communication. You are teaching your brain to react, and reaction speed matters. You do not need to answer immediately all the time, but you need to become comfortable responding without building every sentence from scratch. One excellent practice is what I call the 3-level answer. Take one question. What do you like doing in your free time? Level 1. I like watching movies. Simple. Level 2. I like watching movies, especially when I have a quiet evening. Better. Level 3. I usually watch movies when I need to relax. I'm especially interested in psychological dramas because I like stories that make me think. Now you have trained expansion. You can start simple and continue naturally. This matters because many learners believe they need to speak in long, complicated sentences to sound fluent. They do not. Fluency is not the length of your sentences. It is the ease with which you can continue communicating. A short sentence spoken naturally is better than a complicated sentence spoken with panic. You also need to train listening and speaking together. Listen to a short piece of natural English. Do not listen for an hour passively. Choose 30 seconds. Listen, then pause. Try to reproduce the idea. Not necessarily every exact word. Then listen again. Notice how the speaker connects words. Notice the rhythm. Notice where they pause. Then speak the idea yourself. This builds a bridge between listening and speaking. And do not obsess over sounding exactly like a native speaker. That is a trap. Your goal is not to erase your identity. Your goal is to communicate clearly and naturally. An accent is not a failure. Being difficult to understand is a communication problem. Those are not the same thing. Work on clarity. Work on rhythm. Work on pronunciation of sounds that actually affect understanding. But do not spend 6 months trying to sound like someone from another country while avoiding real conversations. That is backwards. Language exists for communication. Use it. Another important part of conversation training is learning to survive mistakes. You will forget words. You will use the wrong tense. You will pronounce something badly. You will occasionally say something awkward. So what? Correct yourself if the mistake matters. Then continue. I went there yesterday. Sorry. I went there last week. Done. You do not need to mentally punish yourself for 30 seconds. Fluent speakers correct themselves too. The difference is that they keep moving. So train movement, train response, train interaction, train recovery. Because real fluency is not the ability to produce perfect sentences. It is the ability to keep communicating even when the sentence is not perfect. That is the fourth lesson. Stop rehearsing English like an exam answer. Start using it like a conversation. Lesson 5. Build automaticity through repetition. There is a word I want you to remember. Automaticity. It means that a skill can happen with less conscious effort. Think about tying your shoes. When you first learned, you had to think about every movement. Now you probably do it without thinking. Walking is similar. Typing is similar. Driving becomes similar after enough practice. Language can become similar too, but automaticity does not come from understanding something once. It comes from repeated use. And this is where many learners become impatient. They practice a sentence 5 times and expect it to become automatic. That is not enough. Your brain needs repeated exposure across time. Take a simple pattern. I used to. Now build 20 sentences. I used to play football. I used to wake up late. I used to live in another city. I used to be afraid of speaking English. I used to drink coffee every morning. Then ask yourself questions. What did you used to do when you were younger? What did you used to believe? Where did you used to live? What habit did you used to have? Now answer without looking. This repetition gives your brain a pattern. After enough practice, I used to becomes easier to access. You no longer construct the grammar consciously. You retrieve the structure. This is what you want. Do not underestimate simple patterns. Advanced fluency is built on thousands of ordinary structures used quickly and flexibly. You do not need to make every sentence impressive. You need to make useful structures automatic. One of the best ways to do this is to create personal sentence families. Choose one structure. For example, I'm trying to, then connect it to your real life. I'm trying to improve my English. I'm trying to wake up earlier. I'm trying to save money. I'm trying to become more patient. I'm trying to exercise regularly. I'm trying to spend less time on my phone. Now the structure has emotional and personal meaning. That makes practice more memorable. Do the same with I'm looking forward to, I'm worried about, I'm interested in, I'm not used to, I would like to, I'm thinking about, I don't know how to, I've been trying to, I've never, I've already. The goal is not to memorize grammar terminology. The goal is to make useful language available. And here is another powerful idea. Repetition should not always be identical. If you repeat exactly the same sentence 100 times, you may memorize the sentence without developing flexibility. Instead, repeat the structure with changing content. That creates a balance between familiarity and adaptability. For example, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more confidence. I wish I lived closer. I wish I knew the answer. I wish I could travel more. The frame becomes familiar. The meaning changes. Your brain learns how to use the structure rather than simply reciting it. Now add time. Today, I wish I had more confidence. Tomorrow, I wish I had started learning English earlier. Later, what do you wish you had done differently? Now you are retrieving the structure naturally. This is how automaticity develops, and there is something else you must accept. Boredom is sometimes part of training. Not every practice session will feel exciting. That is normal. If you only practice when you feel motivated, your progress will be inconsistent. You do not need 2 hours every day. You need regular contact. 15 focused minutes can be more valuable than 2 hours of passive scrolling. Imagine a person who watches English videos for 2 hours every evening but rarely speaks. Another person watches 20 minutes and spends 15 minutes actively speaking. The second person may develop speaking ability faster because they are training the target skill. Input matters, but input alone does not guarantee output. You need both. Listen, then speak. Read, then explain. Learn, then retrieve. Notice, then imitate. Understand, then use. That cycle is powerful, and do not constantly change your learning method. 1 week vocabulary apps. Next week grammar books. Next week podcasts. Then another course. Then another teacher. Then another system. You can spend years consuming methods instead of practicing. Choose a simple routine and repeat it long enough to see what happens. For example, 5 minutes of listening, 5 minutes of shadowing, 10 minutes of speaking, 5 minutes of review. That is 25 minutes. You can adjust the numbers. The exact formula is not sacred. Consistency matters more. And when you practice, measure something real. Not did I feel fluent today. That is too vague. Measure. How long did I speak without stopping? How many times did I translate? How many words did I retrieve? How many questions could I answer? How often did I use the target structure? How clearly could I explain an idea? These are measurable, and what you measure, you can improve. Automaticity is not magic. It is accumulated repetition. So stop looking for the next revolutionary English technique. You may already have enough material. Now you need enough repetitions. That is the 5th lesson. Do not chase novelty. Build automaticity. Lesson 6. Stop being afraid of mistakes and train under pressure. There is a cruel irony in language learning. The more afraid you are of making mistakes, the fewer mistakes you make. Sounds good, right? It is not, because you also make fewer attempts. And without attempts, your speaking does not grow. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle while refusing to wobble. Impossible. Wobbling is part of learning balance. Language is similar. Mistakes are information. They show you where your current system is weak. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is making the same mistake repeatedly without noticing or correcting it. So when you make a mistake, do not turn it into a judgment about yourself. Turn it into data. You said, "He go to work yesterday." The correction is, "He went to work yesterday." Good. Now use it again. He went to work yesterday. My brother went to work yesterday. She went to the office yesterday. They went home early. You are not simply correcting an error. You are reinforcing the correct pattern. That is useful. But fear can still interfere. Maybe you know the sentence. You understand it. But when a native speaker looks at you, your mind becomes tense. Your heart beats faster. You start monitoring every word. Your attention moves away from communication and towards self-judgment. Did I say that correctly? Was my accent okay? Did they notice my grammar? Maybe I sound stupid. Now you are trying to speak and evaluate yourself at the same time. That is exhausting. Instead, give yourself a communication goal. For example, today, I will tell a 2-minute story. My goal is to make the story understandable, not perfect. Understandable. Tomorrow, I will ask 3 questions. Next day, I will explain my opinion. Next, I will disagree politely. Next, I will tell someone about something I learned. This changes the focus. You are no longer performing English. You are using English to accomplish something. That is a healthier mindset, and you should gradually train under pressure. Start alone, then record yourself, then speak with a trusted person, then join a conversation group, then speak to someone you do not know well, then handle longer conversations. Do not jump from silence to a 30-minute conversation with a native speaker and expect confidence to appear. Build the ladder gradually. And when pressure appears, do not run away immediately. Stay. Take a breath. Use a simple sentence. Continue. Your brain learns from the experience. I felt nervous, but I survived. Then, I felt nervous, but I communicated. Then, I was nervous, but I knew what to say. Eventually, this is normal. That is confidence, not the absence of fear. Familiarity with the situation. There is another important skill here: recovery. Suppose you forget a word. Do not freeze. Say, I forgot the word, but it's something you used to. Then describe it. Suppose you lose your sentence. Say, let me say that another way. Then restart. Suppose you make a mistake. Correct it. Continue. Suppose you do not understand the other person. Ask, could you say that again? Could you speak a little more slowly? What do you mean by that? Do you mean? These are not embarrassing sentences. They are communication tools. A person who can ask for clarification is often more effective than a person who knows thousands of words but stays silent. So train these recovery phrases until they are automatic, because real fluency includes the ability to handle problems. You do not need a perfect conversation. You need a resilient conversation. And there is something I want you to hear carefully. You are allowed to sound like a learner while you are learning. You do not have to wait until you are fluent to start speaking confidently. That is backwards. Confidence is partly created by repeated evidence that you can handle imperfect situations. Speak, make mistakes, correct them. Speak again. Every time you survive the discomfort, the fear becomes smaller, and the brain becomes less threatened by English. This is not about forcing yourself into anxiety. If a situation is overwhelming, make it easier. But do not permanently hide inside your comfort zone. Comfort feels safe, but too much comfort can become a cage. You cannot become comfortable speaking by avoiding speaking. You become comfortable by speaking enough that speaking no longer feels unfamiliar. That is the 6th lesson. Stop treating mistakes as evidence that you are bad at English. Use them as training data, and gradually teach your brain that speaking English is safe enough to do. Lesson 7. Make English part of your life, not just your study time. This final lesson is where everything comes together. If English exists only inside your study schedule, your brain may continue treating it like a school subject. Monday at 7, English. Tuesday at 7, English. Then the lesson ends. English disappears. Real fluency becomes easier when English begins to touch your daily life. Not every moment. Not obsessively, naturally. Use English to think about ordinary things. Use it when you plan. Use it when you describe your day. Use it when you search for information. Use it when you write notes. Use it when you talk to yourself. Use it when you consume something you genuinely enjoy. This does not mean replacing your entire life with English. It means creating more meaningful contact. Imagine your day. You wake up. Instead of immediately translating your plans, think, I need to get ready. I have a busy morning. I should leave early. Then you make breakfast. I need some water. I think I'll have eggs. You go to work. I have a meeting at 10. I need to finish this first. You have a problem. This is taking longer than I expected. You come home. I'm exhausted. I need some time to relax. You watch something in English. You hear a phrase you like. You repeat it. Later you use it. Now English is connected to life. That is powerful. Because your brain learns from relevance. If a language is constantly connected to meaningful situations, it becomes easier to retrieve. This is why personal English is so valuable. Generic sentences are useful, but sentences about your life are more powerful. I live in, I work as, I usually, I used to, I'm trying to, I'm worried about, I'm excited about, I believe, I disagree because. These are the sentences you actually need. Build your English around your reality. If you love cooking, learn English through cooking. If you love business, discuss business. If you love sports, talk about sports. If you enjoy history, listen to history. If you like technology, explain technology. If you are interested in psychology, learn through psychology. Your interests can become fuel. You do not need to force yourself through boring material all the time. The more meaningful the content, the more likely you are to return to it. And remember the difference between passive and active use. Watching a video is passive if you simply watch. It becomes more active when you pause and explain what you heard. Reading is passive if you simply finish the page. It becomes active when you close the book and summarize it aloud. Listening is passive if sounds enter your ears and disappear. It becomes active when you repeat useful phrases and use them later. The goal is not to turn every enjoyable moment into homework. That would make you hate the language. The goal is to occasionally transform consumption into production. You watch something, then talk about it. You read something, then explain it. You hear something interesting, then use the phrase. That is enough. And you need to develop an English identity. Not a fake identity, a practical one. Instead of saying, I am trying to learn English, begin to think, I am someone who uses English. There is a difference. The first identity keeps English in the future. The second brings it into the present. You are not waiting to become fluent before using English. Using English is part of becoming fluent. You are not waiting to become confident before speaking. Speaking is part of building confidence. You are not waiting for your brain to automatically think in English. You are training the brain through repeated English thinking. This is how the process works. Action comes before automaticity. Practice comes before confidence. Retrieval comes before speed. Repetition comes before ease. You cannot reverse the order. And this is why you need patience. Not passive patience, active patience. The kind where you keep showing up while your brain changes slowly. There will be days when English feels easy. There will be days when it feels terrible. Do not judge your entire ability based on one day. Your brain is not a machine that produces identical results every morning. Sleep affects you. Stress affects you. Confidence affects you. The topic affects you. The person you are speaking with affects you. Sometimes you will speak beautifully. Sometimes you will struggle with a sentence you thought you knew. That does not mean you have lost your progress. It means you are human. Keep training, and every few weeks, look backward. Record yourself answering the same question. What are your goals? Then compare the recordings. You may notice that you speak longer. You may notice fewer pauses. You may notice faster retrieval. You may notice better pronunciation. You may notice that you correct yourself more naturally. Those changes are evidence. Do not wait for some dramatic moment where you suddenly feel fluent. Fluency often arrives quietly. One day you realize you answered a question without translating. Another day you realize you watched an entire video without subtitles. Another day you realize you forgot a word but explained it anyway. Another day you realize you had a 10-minute conversation and stopped worrying about every sentence. That is progress, small evidence, repeated over time, and eventually those small changes become a new ability. So if you remember nothing else from this entire lesson, remember this: you do not need to spend your life collecting more English. You need to make the English you already know easier to access. Stop asking only, "What should I learn next?" Start asking, "What can I use today?" Stop asking, "How many words do I know?" Ask, "How many can I retrieve?" Stop asking, "Was my grammar perfect?" Ask, "Did I communicate?" Stop asking, "Why am I still not fluent?" Ask, "What skill am I actually training?" Because sometimes the problem is not effort, it is direction. You can work incredibly hard and still move slowly if you repeatedly train the wrong thing. You can study grammar for years without developing conversational speed. You can memorize vocabulary without learning retrieval. You can watch thousands of English videos without practicing output. You can understand native speakers without learning to respond quickly. So do not confuse activity with progress. Busy does not always mean effective. Studying is not automatically training, and more English is not automatically better English. What matters is what your brain can actually do with the language. That is the shift. You are not building a library. You are building a pathway. A pathway from thought to words. A pathway from meaning to English. A pathway from hearing to understanding. A pathway from understanding to response. And pathways become stronger when you travel them repeatedly. So tomorrow, do something different. Do not begin by opening another vocabulary list. Begin by speaking. Talk for 2 minutes about your day. Then talk for 2 minutes about your goals. Then answer 5 questions without preparation. When you forget a word, explain it. When you make a mistake, correct it. When you pause, continue. Then take one useful phrase and use it 10 different ways. Later that day, retrieve it again. The next day, use it again. Now you are training, and slowly, something begins to change. English stops feeling like something you have to reach for. It starts becoming something you can reach with. The difference may sound small, it is not, because when English becomes accessible, your confidence changes. When your confidence changes, you speak more. When you speak more, you retrieve faster. When you retrieve faster, you need less translation. When you need less translation, speaking becomes easier. And when speaking becomes easier, you begin to speak more naturally. That cycle is what you want to build. Not perfection, momentum, not endless study, useful repetition, not more information, better access, and perhaps the most important thing of all is this: do not make English another reason to doubt yourself. You are not stupid because you forget words. You are not incapable because you pause. You are not too old because learning feels slower. You are not failing because you make mistakes. You are training a complex skill, and complex skills take repetition. But be honest with yourself too. Do not use encouragement as an excuse to stay comfortable. If you want to speak, you must speak. If you want faster retrieval, you must retrieve. If you want less translation, you must practice direct thinking. If you want confidence, you must experience imperfect conversations. No motivational sentence can do that work for you. You have to train, and you do not need to train perfectly. You need to train consistently. One conversation, one paragraph, 1 minute, one phrase, one retrieval, one correction, one more attempt. That is how the brain changes. Not through one magical lesson, through thousands of small repetitions that eventually become automatic. So stop studying English as if you are preparing for a test you will take someday. Start training your brain as if you are building a skill you will use today. Because you are. English is not a collection of rules sitting inside a book. It is something you use to tell people who you are, to explain what you believe, to ask for what you need, to tell your stories, to make friends, to work, to travel, to learn, to connect. And your goal is not to become a person who knows everything about English. Your goal is to become a person who can use English when it matters. That is a much more realistic goal, and a much more powerful one. So from today, change the question. Do not ask, what should I study? Ask, what should I train? Do not ask, what word should I memorize? Ask, what word can I use? Do not ask, how can I avoid mistakes? Ask, how can I recover when I make one? Do not ask, when will I finally become fluent? Ask, what can I do today that will make tomorrow's English easier? Then do that thing. Again, and again, and again. Until one day, you notice something you were not expecting. You are speaking, not perfectly, not magically, but naturally enough that you are no longer watching every word leave your mouth. You are simply communicating, and maybe that is what you were looking for all along. Not more English, not another notebook, not another list, not another course, but a brain that knows how to use what you already know. So stop studying English forever. Start training your brain to speak it, and give yourself enough repetition, enough courage, and enough real practice for English to stop feeling like a subject you are learning, and start feeling like a skill that belongs to you.